Hello, I'm Luke Gronowski.
I'm Patrick Daniels.
I'm Sam Barlow. It's Tuesday, December 15th, 2020, and we'll be interviewing Mr. Jamie O Donoghue. All right, so you were born in Milwaukee, is that correct?
That's right.
So you grew up in Tosa before you actually moved to Milwaukee, and you grew up in a bungalow.
Right. Yeah, we grew up on 66th Street between Wisconsin Avenue and Blue Mound Road.
And how many siblings do you have?
I have, there's 5 of us total. There's older brother and sister and a younger brother and sister.
And you had a dog, is that correct?
I had what?
You had a dog?
We had many dogs. We had an Irish setter. Actually, we had 2 Irish setters growing up, and then we had 3 Cocker Spaniels before I left the house at 18.
Were any of them particularly your favorites?
Well, the first Buffy, we had 3 Buffies that were all our Cocker Spaniels. My mom refused to change the name. Right now, they're on their 3rd Maggie. But the first Buffy was pretty cool. She was a really rambunctious little cockapoo. And she was pure white with a black nose. And she loved to hide in the snow. So you could, really hard to find her when the snow was deep. She'd bury her whole head in the snow and you couldn't see her. And it was kind of fun. She had great energy.
So, I mean, growing up as a kid in the Milwaukee area, were there any like significant memories that you had in your early childhood, whether it be with your siblings, your parents? Would it be like going to a Brewer game or anything like that?
I just remember the freedom I had to go wherever I wanted. We'd get on our bikes and we would go downtown. We would go everywhere. Nobody told us where to go. We just had to go. And the deal was my mom would say, get out of the house, be back when the street lights came on. And we had freedom to go anywhere. There was no worry about, someone harming you or, as a kid back in the 60s, you just went wherever you wanted to go. And nobody ever said like, watch out for this or watch out for that. It was just wide open. So it just let us explore and really get to see things from a kid's perspective. It was really, really neat, to be able to go downtown and go down and drive around on your bike on Marquette's campus or we'd go to like a little gag shop called the Moon Fun Shop downtown on our bikes and pick up like, gum that turn your teeth black or, just little fun things that you did in, those little Chinese finger tortures where you couldn't get your fingers out and just little things that, just little gags. And it was just fun to be able to go down there every Saturday on your bike and have freedom to go everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, that sense of freedom has certainly something that's been lost over ages with like media putting out more things like more dangers to children and things like that. So that was definitely a cool thing that you could do back then and something that has been lost today.
Yeah.
So, I mean, your dad owned some bars as well. When did you start like becoming a part of that, either like helping clean up or just becoming a part of it in general?
So as just a little kid, my dad had a lot of vending machines. So either after school or on weekends, the kids would go down and my dad would have cigar boxes full of quarters. He would empty, 2 of his bars had jukeboxes, cigarette machines. He had candy machines and he had all kinds of pinball and pool tables, foosball and pinball. And like I said, all kinds of video games. So we would go down and hand roll all his quarters and he would feed us by giving us Coca-Cola, Tombstone pizzas. And then we'd eat all the junk. We'd eat Hershey bars and Wrigley's gum and, Planters peanuts and Slim Jims. And that was kind of our diet when we worked at the bar, at the first bar. And that started when I was probably a little kid, probably, 8 years old. And then we did that for a while. And we did odd jobs for him, whatever he wanted. And then by the time I went to Marquette High School in 1976, I took over my brother's former job, my older brother, which was then taken over later by my younger brother. I went down in the mornings and cleaned the bar and stocked all the coolers and emptied the bottle chute before going to Marquette High. And then I would finish up after Marquette High. So I did that through high school. And then the summer before college, my dad opened a bar on Marquette University's campus. So the first bar was on 35th and State Street, a blue collar bar between Concordia College Harley Davidson and Miller Brewery. And then I ended up bartending at the new bar on Marquette's campus. So the first one was O'Donoghue's Irish Pub. The next one was O'Donoghue's Pub, and bartended there. Then I went to La Crosse to go to college for a couple of years, but I'd come home on weekends, probably every other week, and bartend for money. And after 2 years in La Crosse, I moved back and went to UW Milwaukee, and I started bartending pretty much on a regular basis, about 3 days a week, sometimes 4, and continued to do that for 6 years, even after I graduated. And then in 1986, they opened their fine dining restaurant outside of County Stadium called O'Donoghue's. And I took over the bar there and was the bar manager for 10 years. So that was kind of the history of my career with my parents, about a 16-year run as a bartender, and then other 4-year run as a swamper, as they call it, cleaning, and whatever else with odd jobs before that.
So, I mean, every bar has its regulars in a sort of way. So the first bar that you helped out with your dad, do you have any like significant bodies that stood out to you? Any significant regulars that would stand out to you?
Yeah, there were some really great people. There was, there was this guy named Harry Logan. He liked to drink a little too much. He was a painter. And I'll never forget, because I was cleaning the bar and my dad gave Harry the keys and said, hey, paint the basement. I got this gray paint. It's kind of a silver paint, and I want you to paint the whole basement. Well, Harry got into the liquor room and must have been drinking that night, because when I got there, he was sleeping on top of a bunch of cases of beer. And Harry had this new thing back in those days, in the 1970s, it was new. It was a paint sprayer. Well, he literally painted the entire basement, including like the half barrels. If you took a hammer that was on the wall off, you'd see the mark of where he just painted the hammer. He never moved anything. He just got drunk and wildly painted everything. Painted the stairs. It was the craziest thing. But he painted everything. But it was a mess. My dad had a lot of work to do to clean it up. But we had guys like that. We had guys with nicknames like Harry the Hat and Big Ed the Garbage Man. And we had this great old lady named Adeline. She was the secretary for the We Energies, the electric company at the time. And she had her own bench that my dad built. And the funny thing was, everyone knew to get up when Adeline came in. And if you weren't up, she'd take her cane and rap the wall. And if you didn't get it by then, she'd actually hit you with it. So it was kind of fun to have people with a lot of character like that. That first bar was full of them. We had Dr. Foy. He had no thumbs. And he would say things like, he wouldn't ask for a little beer and a shot. He'd say, give me a touch of the fluff and a dab for the demon. He had his own little language for everything, and a lot of characters. And so we had a ton of characters there. We had a ton of characters on Wells Street at the pub, with names like Orville and Frida, the mailman and his wife, Mr. Francis, who was a former chef, or Chef Carl, Mr. Francis. We had Blondie from Real Chili, who was a good regular. And what she would do is she would do things like, her name was Harriet Tursick, and she worked at Real Chili. And so when you go to Real Chili, her line was always, mix it up good, boys, mix it up good. And then when the sailors would come in from Great Lakes and they wouldn't take their hats off, she'd say, uncover, uncover. They'd take their hats off, and then she'd sing Anchors Away to them. So there's a lot of characters like that. They gave it a lot of depth and, just character. You can't make these people up. They were just all originals. They were all throwbacks. A lot of them were from like the vaudeville age and the wars and the Depression, and they had really good stories, and they lived really full lives, and it was great to be around them. I learned so much just being around them.
I mean, so yeah, every bar has those like standout characters that you'll remember for the rest of your life. But with Milwaukee being like an industrial town, would you ever have like a lot of factory workers coming on a day after the job?
Oh yeah, always. Back in the day when my dad was doing things, the original Irish bars weren't really owned by Irish immigrants. They were just owned by Irish Americans. And a lot of them were up near Marquette High in the Merrill Park area, in Pigsville, which is just east down in the Miller Valley, or just west of Marquette High, and around the Concordia area. And a lot of those Irish immigrants, they supported the bars in the neighborhood bars, like Gainers and the Irish Village, and Murray's, and all those bars around Marquette. That was where the blue collar guys that worked on the railroad and all those industrial jobs at Jones Island and other things. That's where they worked, and they went out drinking afterwards. They worked hard and they played hard. And a lot of times, you know, they'd go down and cash their paycheck at the bar. My dad was famous for cashing checks on Friday. All the blue collar guys would roll in. My dad would have to go to the M&I Bank 3-4 times a day to get a box full of money to cash the checks, but they would spend the money at his place. Oftentimes, the wife would send the kids down to go get the dad out of the bar before he spent all the money that he earned for that week. So oftentimes you'd see people go down and get their dad out of the bar, and, you know, they were just having fun with their friends. And, you know, on the other side of the valley, you had the National Liquor Bar. They did the same thing. My dad was on the north side of the valley, and the workers just worked in the valley. It was a big place for working, and Falk Corporation and the railroad, the Milwaukee Road. And so many of those blue collar guys were regulars. They came in all the time, cashed their check, drank. Before, you know, we had Miller Brewery was 2 blocks west. Harley Davidson was 3 blocks northwest. Concordia College was 2 blocks east. And nobody had, pardon me, nobody had their money through their phone. You couldn't access. Nobody had a cell phone back then, so it was a paper check. So parents would send their kids a check, or they had a checking account. My dad cashed checks for the college kids and for the workers. So he was busy all the time. And he sponsored like 16 softball teams. Those guys would come in and spend all the time. And, you know, so you just had this great mix, especially the first bar, of college, blue collar, judges and lawyers going home down State Street. It was a one-way street. So everyone going out to the west suburbs was coming by, stopping at my dad's bar. It was the only really nice bar until you got to Saz's up by Hawley Road. So it was the first stop really for people coming out of downtown. So we had this great mix. We had tradesmen. It was just a really cool time. And as I may have mentioned, my mom called it the poor man's country club. It was just a great spot. And that first bar was one of the greatest things I've ever seen. And, you know, my goal is moving forward to get back to that when we can get our old timers back after coronavirus, get our families with kids and get that mix going again, because there's nothing like it when you have every kind of aspect of the community. Like, you know, differences like our college bar was 99% college kids. So it didn't have all the flavor and the seasonings, but you had those regulars during the daytime before the kids came out that really made it. And they would mix in with a few students, and that's where the real action was. And that was the exciting part of it, when the mix was on and you had young kids hanging out with old guys. And, you know, they would tell the kids, you know, they didn't buy any of their baloney at all. They would tell it straight and set them straight. And you'd just laugh. You'd be like, yeah, you just got schooled, you know, you just lesson 101, listen to the old timer.
Yeah. So, I mean, with all the bars that you've helped out with over the years, have you ever had to witness any like fights or issues of like violence going on with people maybe drinking too much or anything like that?
Oh yeah. Every weekend at my dad's college bar was a brawl. Usually started over a pool game. Some guys came in just to fight. They want, the rugby team would come in and want to pick a fight with another group of guys. And we had 4 bouncers and 4 bartenders. And usually the bartenders were usually former bouncers. So everyone was pretty big and tough, and we just go and take out the whole thing. We would just go in and slugging, and you just jump the bar and go in grabbing guys and just start hitting them in the face and throwing them out in the street. And I'll never forget, I had this one guy, probably my size, and he was pretty drunk, so I got him pretty quickly. And I got him outside, and I was bouncing his head off of a parked car. And the cop says, what the hell do you think you're doing? And I said, he hit one of my bouncers. He goes, okay. And he puts him in cuffs and arrests him. And that was awesome. I was just smashing the guy's face. And, you know, these guys would just come in and just start fights on a regular basis every Friday, every Saturday. And you just have to go bust it up, and you go in and you go in and hit them. And, you know, usually there was at the old bar, usually it was the Krause brothers. They had like 14 kids. It was like the 11 Krause brothers and sometimes the sisters against anyone else. So Krause brothers could hit each other, but nobody else could hit a Krause. And if somebody did, they were all coming after you. And so you just knew not to mess with that family. And so there was Krause's fighting, and there was a couple other families that would fight there. And It was mostly peaceful there. The college bar was the most wild. Never a fight at the restaurant, and we've never had a real fight out on Elm Grove either. We've had a couple disturbances, but just really the college bar. The kids would drink too much and wouldn't know how to behave, and it's just ended up being a big fight, and it would end really quickly. We would get in there, all 8 of us would get in there and end it quickly.
Yeah. So, I mean, as a kid, you helped work at your dad's bars, obviously, but you mentioned you also had a paper route. So how would you balance working between the paper route and working at your dad's bars?
So mostly my paper route was in grade school, and it probably went into early high school. So basically I had a morning route. I delivered the Milwaukee Sentinel, and then after school I had an afternoon route, and I would carry 2 bags. And sometimes I had one route, or sometimes I picked up a second route to make more money if it became available. So I'd have to go back. So you go up to the shack. The one I had was on 61st and Blue Mountain. You get a big stack of papers. You'd have to take all the advertisements. You'd have to slide them in. It's called collating the papers. Then you'd stack them, knead them up, put them in your big satchel over your shoulder, do another one over this shoulder, get on your bike and go deliver. And you deliver in the morning, deliver at night. And then the Sunday paper was huge back in the day with all the extra sections and advertisements. So my dad would close the bar on Saturday night, and he'd have a couple drinks after they cleaned up, and he'd call me about 5 a.m. and I'd get up and I'd get ready and I'd go up to the shack and collate the Sunday paper, and he'd drive me on Sunday, which is nice because the papers were way too big to go on the bike. And, I basically took the bike or walked all year long through the snow, everything. And back then you had to collect the money, and you had to go once a week and try to collect money. Some people hid from you, so you never knew how to get the money sometimes, but you always had to pay for the papers every week. I had the journal route, which was the one where my dad drove me in the morning. Then after the route was finished, go to church at a Holy Cross on 53rd and Blue Mountain. And then we go to George Webb's, and then my dad would go to bed for the rest of the day. We wouldn't see him until Monday morning. We'd always drive my dad down to Miller Brewery, where he was a blue collar worker. Then we'd either pick him up after school with my mom and drive him up the hill he was 3 or 4 blocks from where he was in the plant. He was a foreman on a beer line. And then he'd go to work right away at the bar right after working a full day at Miller. He'd work all night till closing. He did that 5 nights a week. So from the time I was in grade school into high school, my dad was working 2 jobs, Monday through Friday. And then he'd work 10 hours on Saturdays. So he was working like 90-hour weeks for many, many years. So we didn't see him a whole lot other than going to the bar to see him. So we'd go after school and hang out. And that was our way to just hang with him at the bar. Or weekends, we'd go down and hang with him a little bit. And then he figured it out when we got into high school and stuff. He quit Miller Brewery. He had broke out in a full body rash from too much stress of working so hard for so long. And the doctor told me he had to quit once. So he quit Miller Brewery after 25 years. And that's when he bought the bar on 35th Street out from his uncle, Jim Haggerty, who was his partner. And then a few years after that, bought the bar from his uncle, who also owned a bar down at Marquette's campus. And then 7 years after that, in 1986, he bought the restaurant, for my mother, who really wanted to always have a fine dining restaurant. And that was right outside County Stadium.
Yeah. So you mentioned in grade school, I mean, everybody's got their recreational things that they do. With your friends, you take over Jacobus Park, kick the big kids out, and you're also hailed as the ping pong champion in grade school, if I'm correct.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. We did a couple things. We hung out at Jacobus Park. In the winter, we would sled down the regular hill, but at the bottom of the hill was a huge water tower. And all they did was put hay bales around it, and people just got crushed all the time. If you didn't have a sled that you could steer, if you were on a saucer or one of those little pieces of plastic like a mini boggin or something, you're just crushing the hay bales at the bottom full speed. And as a kid, you just shook it off. Right now, I wouldn't be able to get up off the ground if I hit those things. But then when we got really crazy, we went down Suicide Hill, which was over through the woods. It was straight down into the creek, no stopping, trees everywhere. People got crushed on that thing. It was really tough. And then for fun, we'd like to skate on Jacobus Pond. It was just really great. And in really cold winters, you could skate the creek and the river. So it was endless. So you could really, really stretch it out. But the pond seemed big enough for us at the time. And we had a lot of fun in the winter. In the summer, we built forts in there. And we thought it was so much bigger. I go through there with my dog now, and it seems so small. And, But as a kid, it was like being in the movie Stand By Me. You know, you just, everything was an adventure. And we had them. We blew stuff up, and we burned things, and we just, we had a lot of fun. We chopped things up with our machetes, and just kind of, we were a little wild, and we liked to fight against the bigger kids because we were kind of crazy. And I was a boxer from the time I was in 4th grade, so wasn't afraid to get after it. So we always were kind of mixing it up with the bigger kids and kind of taking things over. And then we would recreate at the summer at the public schools. They had summer playground, Jefferson School on 70th and Etna in Tosa, and Wilson School out on Portland and Glenview. And we'd play, we just did all kinds of things. We went on field trips, and we had sports, and we had all kinds of games like box hockey and skelly and ping pong and softball and all kinds of stuff. And so I got into ping pong pretty big, probably in 4th or 5th grade. And by the time I was in 7th grade, I won the city championship in Tosa. So I think I held that for a couple of years, and that was a lot of fun. It's fun. You go to the other playgrounds and take on the challengers. And so, yeah, that was a lot of fun. We had some great summers growing up, just so much fun.
Yeah, that sounds great. I mean, although you were just a small child at the time, I mean, the Father Groppi Marches were a huge part in Milwaukee history. Do you remember any facets of the Father Groppi Marches?
I remember just my mom saying we had to stay in the yard when I was going on. Mainly, they were going over to the south side, over the 6th and 16th Street bridges. They were going up Wisconsin Avenue up through our house. They wanted to protest Judge Cannon, who made a ruling, I think, on the Eagles Club, that the Eagles Club did not have to integrate. So he ruled, and he lived up in Tosa before moving to Elm Grove. And his son Bill has Cannon and Dunphy, and their son Connor was in my son Brendan's class. And the grandfather was a neat old guy, but back in those days, he came up with a ruling. And I remember the protesters marched up Wisconsin Avenue, like 8 houses off Wisconsin Avenue. My mom's like, "You're not leaving the yard. Stay within, where I can see you." And that's what we kind of did. We were kind of aware of the protests, but it wasn't until I was much older that I really knew what was really going on. I knew that there was marching for integration and for equal rights and protections, but I didn't know much about that at the time because I would have been 6, 7, and 8 years old. So, I wasn't as affected at the time, but I do recall it.
Yeah. So between St. Jude's and Wauwatosa and Marquette High, was the Sisterhood and the Brotherhood huge parts in the teaching there? Because you don't really see that much anymore.
Oh, yeah. So when I was at St. Jude, we had a very strong Monsignor Holleran running the school, and he lived a very good life. He traveled, and he probably had a bigger Waterford crystal collection than my mother, who had a very large one. He lived a really nice life, and drank well, ate well. And the nuns, they didn't have it so good. There was a lot of them. I grew up with mostly nuns from the mid 60s until 1976, when I graduated St. Jude, the Apostle. And a lot of nuns influenced my life, and I'm still friends with several of them, probably 4 of them, 5 of them. I'm still friends of to this day, and I see them either at church or they come into the pub. And so it's great. We still have relationships. They're all lay people now. None of the nuns remained in the Sisterhood. Marquette High was probably half Jesuit when I was there in the late 70s, and I graduated in 1980. It's probably close to half when you included the scholastics that were there on their way to becoming Jesuits. There was always 3 or 4 of those. But the Jesuits were aging out when I was there. It wasn't going to be long into the 80s or early 90s that they really were few. And it's just been, it was great. We had our principal was always a Jesuit. So yeah, it was just a neat time to grow up. The Jesuits were such great instructors. I mean, I'll never forget that. Just most of my Jesuit taught classes, I really learned so much from. And And to this day, a lot of it has stuck with me, especially, aesthetical theology with Don Driscoll and just so many of these guys talk, Shakespeare with John Crowley and, just many of these guys, it's what they taught me has stuck with me for life. And we're talking, I graduated 40 years ago this year. And so it's still with me. So the Jesuits have left a great mark on me.
Yeah. So you mentioned a good friend of yours was Bud Fox, who went to high school with you. What were like some significant memories you shared either in grade school or in high school with him?
Well, Buddy and I were thick as thieves from the beginning, freshman year, and until he died this April of a pulmonary embolism due to a blood clot from knee surgery. We were still super close, and just one of the best people in my life. And so many of our memories were around Marquette High School, going to football games together, going to watch him play hoops, CYM first for St. Catherine's. And then we finally fattened him up enough and got him ready for Marquette High, where he joined the team as a junior on varsity. And I took him to Cops all the time for double cheeseburgers and double thick milkshakes after school, just trying to put some weight on him because he was 6'4" and 145 pounds. And we got him up to, 180, 190 before he graduated. So we did a good job. But we were super close, and we were in the same retreat group together. So we had so many good memories on retreats. And one of the funnest things on retreat with him was we went out four-wheeling when we were on break. Two of the guys in our group had Jeeps, and we went up to some farms. We were up on Lake Michigan at the Shearer Cottage, and we went out and we were like going through the mud and everything. It was so much fun. Well, we kind of stopped for a while, and I remember just tackling him into the mud, and he just got stuck. It was just suctioned him in, and I just started putting mud right in his mouth. Just kept doing it, and it was a fun memory. Just we had to ride back on top of the Jeep hood because we couldn't get on the seats because I let him get me back, and we were just completely covered, and we had to go jump in the lake, and it was just a really fun memory. That was just one of many, and then just the fact that we would work for each other so we could hang out with each other, and we did. We would go and party a little bit, drink, and then we'd go clean my dad's bar after bar time. And then we'd go up to Port Washington and crew his dad's boat. We'd take a group of businessmen out and charter fish. And then we'd go out to Army Lake and ski all day on Saturday. And then we go back and have some fun. And then we go just clean the bar. And then we go to his dad's printing company, Fox Lithographers, and we would collate papers and do whatever he needed us to do. So we basically were together from Friday night through Sunday afternoon for years, and had a great time doing it, and just had a lifelong friendship with him. And I carry that on with all of his kids. 4 went to Marquette High, and all his siblings. I'm still close to them. And so, yeah, we still have that bond forever, no matter whether he's here or not.
So you mentioned, Bud Fox, I think one of his nephews goes to Marquette High currently and is in our class, Sam Fox. So that's just kind of
I know.
connection to draw.
I know Sam. That's Matt's son. He's a Shorewood kid.
Yeah, it's just a cool connection to draw. I mean, how generation after generation will go to Marquette High, and how it's kind of passed down from father to son.
Yeah, and 2 of my 3 sons went to Marquette High, and Brendan and Sean, and graduated in 17 and 12. And I know for sure they'll keep the tradition going, and that's kind of set. And, on the other side, my mother went to Holy Angels, and my sisters went there, and my daughter went there. So we've got that tradition going as well. My dad came from Ireland, so he didn't have the same experience. But once we drank the Kool-Aid, we were all in.
So you mentioned Father John Egan had a strong part in helping develop your faith life. Does that still resonate with you today?
Yeah, so exactly. So besides being my counselor from freshman year through senior year, he also became my Christian life community leader, which is your retreats, your weekly meetings with your group, and then your semester retreats. He really taught me how to pray, really taught me about spirituality and the Ignatian ways. And so, I really follow Ignatius in my prayer. And I'm going to the Jesuit retreat house the first weekend of January, making my first retreat in a while. I've made about 16 or 17 retreats up there. They're weekend silent retreats. And Father Egan taught me a lot about getting in the place, getting yourself ready so you can be receptive to hearing God talk to you. So finding a quiet space, tensing all your muscles and then relaxing them so that you can just be opening your mind and through silence, clearing your thoughts for God to work the corners of your soul and in your person, and then try to get a little bit deeper into it. And Father John Egan was completely responsible. Father Frank Matchka took that a little bit further in deepening my sense of prayer and faith itself, and getting me to read more about different ways of praying or just reading prayers, teaching me that by singing songs in prayer, it's just another way of talking to God. So it gives you just an extra way of doing it besides meditation or reading prayers. When you sing prayers like at church or on retreats, it's just another way of praising God and reaching out. So those things have all been cornerstones in my life that were taught and built over years, and that I still take with me to this day. I love to pray. I really do. I love praying. I pray every day. I pray in so many different ways in so many places, whether I go to the Adoration Chapel to really get in with the Blessed Sacrament, or just go to church and light a candle, or I usually often just pray before I get out of bed in the morning and start my day that way, get my head straight. And I stop throughout the day. I've got little booklets and things like that I read. And I get messages on my phone every day from Jesuit Retreat House to read, or Cristo Rey High School sends me stuff, and Jesuit Nativity School sends me stuff. So I'm always getting stuff on emails. And so I'm constantly checking and going, well, that's a good way to take a break in the day, read that, get a message. And so there's a good formation in my faith life. And I could say it started at St. Jude's, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I was just a kid. But when I got to Marquette High, I really got touched. And that's where the faith that I have now was formed.
So moving on from like Marquette High, did you really know what you wanted to go into in college? Did you know you wanted to go to college at all coming out of Marquette High?
Yeah, so I knew I was going to college, and I was going to go to Marquette U, and I was all set to go there. And then my girlfriend from Carrie Doherty from DSHA went up to St. Mary's Winona. So I said, I got friends going to La Crosse. I'll go to La Crosse so I could be near her. Well, it never worked out. She dumped me soon after for her brother's roommate. And so I followed her for no reason. But I didn't know what I wanted to do at La Crosse. I started just by taking business school classes, and ended up thinking I wanted to be like a stockbroker or a salesperson, business sales. And when I came back to UW-Milwaukee after 2 years, I switched over to economics. I loved economics. There was a guy named Jim Copeland, the cat, they called him. He was economics teacher at Marquette High, tennis coach, and a well-respected debate coach. Marquette was winning national championships on a regular basis under him. I think he won over 10 nationals. He taught me economics, so it kind of was always there. And then I took it in business school at La Crosse. And I said, you know what, I really love economics. So I finished in economics at UW-Milwaukee, and I really didn't know what I was going to do. My roommate and I both graduated economics, and we called it the dismal science. We're like, what in the hell are we going to do now? There's no way we're going to get a job. We're going to have to go to grad school or, whatever, and he married someone rich, so he didn't have to worry about it. So he married the president of Miller Brewery's daughter. And so I had nothing going on. So I'm like, all right, well, I got into sales right after college. Hi, Lily. I got into sales. I sold World's Finest chocolate bars to youth groups, schools, little leagues, all kinds of stuff. And they'd sell the bar for $1 and they'd keep 50 cents and I'd get 50 cents to pay the company, and I got like a 10% cut. And we did this all over southeastern Wisconsin. And so And then on the wrapper of the chocolate bar was always a like buy one get one free McDonald's burger or Burger King or half off something. So it was really, you got your money back right away when you bought these things. So they sold like crazy. And so I did that for a couple of years. Had a son right out of college, my son Patrick, and I was in sales. And then my parents had a need, 1986 or 7. Their bar manager wasn't working out at the new restaurant. And so I said I'd come in and help him for a while, and I never really got out. That ended up being a 10-year manager stint, ending in 1996. And then I went over right away. They opened up a new place on the east side called County Clare, and I went over there and opened the bar there and was the main bar guy there for 5 years. And I took a little time off to watch my 2 youngest kids at the time, number 3 and 4. And my wife went back to U.S. Bank as senior management, and I ended up buying vert bricks in Elm Grove, which I've had for 19 years.
So when you transferred from La Crosse to Milwaukee, what ultimately swayed your decision to do that?
It was so strange. I could work at my dad's bar and make a ton of money on weekends, and I couldn't get a bartending job in La Crosse. Nobody knew me. Nobody would hire me. I asked a bunch of people. So I couldn't find work there. And I'm like, you know what? This is crazy. I'm going down to Milwaukee every other weekend. I might as well just move home, And so I did. And a bunch of my friends had transferred to Madison and a couple to Milwaukee. So I'm like, this would be a good time to make a move. So I made the switch. I had as much employment as I wanted. My dad would never say no to me wanting to work. So I usually worked like import night, which was Wednesday. I worked Saturday, I worked a double, and I worked Friday night and sometimes Sunday day. So, yeah, it was a good gig. I was making money and having a lot of fun for sure. There's nothing like bartending in a college bar with 400 students coming into your bar.
Yeah. So when did you get married on starting a family?
Well, I got my girlfriend pregnant in college, so that's how I started the family, senior year. So we got married about 6 months before he was born, and then went a ways after that. Didn't have any more kids, and then we got a divorce. We weren't really right for each other. That went pretty quickly, and then I met my wife Deb, and my son was probably 6, and I fell in love with her, and we had our son Brendan pretty quickly. And a few years after that came Sean and Katie. So, so I knew the family building was just a natural thing. I love kids, and it just kind of came pretty naturally at that point. Deb wanted to have 12 kids, but we met a little too late. So she wanted to have a football team with 1 cheerleader. So I thought that was a little wild, but we could have done it. She's got a big heart.
So ultimately deciding to leave World's Finest Chocolate was your dad needing help at his bar. So when you were working, during your work there, did you kind of make the decision that you wanted to stay in the bar industry or the pub industry in Milwaukee?
No, I always had the idea that I was going to get out and get that sales job. And, once they were ready to sell, I just hadn't left myself in the right position to do anything. I hadn't been building up contacts towards a sales job or anything. And as we were getting towards the end, I knew I was going out to my brother's wedding in Aspen, Colorado. And I knew I wanted to ask Deb to marry me. So a couple days after my brother got married, I proposed to Deb in Aspen. We came home on like a Tuesday. No, we came home on a Wednesday. And that was the last night my parents' restaurant was open. So we had a big party, and that was it. But I knew County Clare was being built out. It was brand new. It was gorgeous. It was an Irish bar. I could do it. I knew I could do it. So I called them up, and they were thrilled. They wanted me to come very badly and run the bar because they knew of my experience and knew what I had built up over years at my dad's place. And so I went there and ran their bar for 5 years before retiring to take care of the kids for a little while, and then opening my place, O Donoghue's Irish Pub in Elm Grove.
So when did your dad own the restaurant that was close to County Stadium when the Packers would play there and the Brewers would play there?
Yeah, so we started there in '86. We bought a famous restaurant. It was called Ray Jackson's. And Ray Jackson's in the 50s and 60s, and even into the 70s, even the 80s, I guess, was famous for hosting the Milwaukee Braves and Brewers, the Yankees, the Packers, all the visiting teams. He had a private dining room where the players would go and they wouldn't be bothered. So Ray Jackson's son, Jim Jackson, was a great chef. He still has a restaurant called Jackson Grill on 38th and Mitchell in Milwaukee, which is really, really good. So we bought their place. It was kind of had seen better days. The dad liked to play the ponies and the son liked to party a little too much. So they'd kind of let it fall into disrepair and weren't putting the money where they should have. And so my parents bought it and they made it into a gorgeous place, remodeled it, and really had it humming with great food. And we did Sunday brunches for Packer games and Brewer games. And we had we didn't really have the players as much. We had a lot of the coaches coming in and some of the management, and some of the players came in, and Bob Uecker and others would come in pretty regularly. And some of the players would come and play cards and stuff and have drinks. And but we had the fans. We really had a great crowd fan base. So that place was great. We were in really good times. We went just after the Brewers had their World Series run, like a few years later. And so the fans were really captivated at that time and really all in, sort of like they are now, but differently. It was a different group of fans, different type of fans. And 40 years, 35 years makes a big difference in how it looked. And, you know, we had a lot of hometown heroes and guys like Gorman Thomas and Pete Vukovich. And, you know, these are like blue collar Brewers that really people could relate to in Milwaukee. So it was really, there was a great symbiotic relationship between the fans and the players, and you had access to the players back then. They like now players are all protected. The league tells them to stay away from people because somebody's going to try to get your money, or, you know, some woman's going to try to get pregnant, or somebody's going to try to entice you with something. So players don't come around people anymore. But back then they were all over the place. They were coming up and hanging and having a drink with you, and it was just a fun time.
Did you ever have to deal with people either, maybe heckling's a strong word, but I'll use it, heckling like management of the Packers or like the coaches or anybody, like any famous people that would come into your pub?
No, everyone was really respectful. It was really a great time. It was great to see it. You know, it was a restaurant. We didn't, you know, we'd have some drunks, you know, come after a game or something, but nobody ever bothered anyone. And my dad would handle it. My dad would say, you know, we don't tolerate any crap. So my dad was real quick to find somebody who was maybe out of line and get them out immediately. And he had, my brother Johnny was, you know, a bodybuilder. If he grabbed you, you were done. You know, you're just out.
So when you moved to County Clare and started working there as a bar manager, I mean, County Clare to this day is still viewed as like a quintessential Irish pub in Milwaukee, and it's almost a tourist attraction of sorts.
No
Did you
doubt.
see that becoming a thing when you were working there?
Yeah, we built it from nothing. I literally built the crowd there. The whole Irish movement was big with like Riverdance and Lord of the Dance and Irish music, and Guinness was growing into this big marketed beer before the micro beers came out with all the IPAs and everything that people are drinking. And the Irish movement was just happening right when we opened County Clare in '96. And so I was at the right place, in the right place at the right time. And I was able to build it into a frenzy. We had it going on. I was really good with music, you know, mixing the music up and keeping the environment lively. And I always had a good fire going in the fireplace, and, you know, it was just always looked good when I was there. It always felt right. And I was able to really keep the crowd and keep them happy. And I had a good thing going on down there. And the owner, Rip O'Dwani, put together a really nice staff, along with a really great product. The food was great. The atmosphere was great. They had a beautiful 22-room hotel that was part of it. And so a lot of business people stayed there. People stayed on weekends for romantic getaways. That was a really cool place. The rooms were really great. The pub itself was really cool. It had It had a snug with a fireplace that was really nice. And yeah, it was really, really a great time and a great place.
So yeah, with your bars and pubs, you'll always get like the locals. That's a given. But did you ever get like any big name out of town people that would stay at the hotel or possibly just visit the bar in general?
No, not really. You know, it seems like the Pfister was always the place for the famous people, all the sports teams and the rock stars and everything like that stayed at the Pfister. I couldn't tell you if there was ever anyone famous that stayed there or not. I didn't work weekends. I worked Sunday through Thursday. Rarely working a weekend night, only on fill-in. So I'm not sure. I never recall anyone famous or infamous staying there. But we had a lot of great business people, a lot of great characters that came and stayed and really built some great relationships over those years.
During your stay there at County Clare, were there any like big changes you made personally, or any like yeah, any changes you made?
No, not really. I mean, it was really set up really well in the beginning. I mean, the artwork, the Irish sayings on the wall, the colors of paint, the layout, the food, the beers, everything was really just right. I walked into something extremely special. My job really in making changes was to build the crowd. So I built it into a frenzy. I had that was probably the most popular bar in the city of Milwaukee when I was running the bar. And I had all the industry people. So I was great for getting all the waiters and waitresses and managers and stuff to come in. And those guys all spent money because they knew what it was like. They all were in the industry. So we had the thing rocking with industry people. And then everyone else fed off of that. They wanted to be around that energy. So I was the guy responsible for building. I did the same thing, not so much at my dad's college bar, but at the restaurant, I built that into a frenzy. We had that going, and that was due to my hard work and getting to know people and building that. I built County Clare into a frenzy, and I've been able to build O Donoghue in Elm Grove into what it is, which is a great place, and look forward to post-coronavirus when we get everyone back in.
So with County Clare, I mean, Irish was a huge immigrant group back in Milwaukee when people were starting to come here for the first time. Was utilizing like that sort of Irish culture a big way you could draw people into attending County Clare?
I think it was an international phenomenon that was going on at the time. It was Michael Flatley came up with these things, the Lord of the Dance, where beautiful champion Irish dancers were going to do these awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping dance shows in Lord of the Dance and River Dance. And all of a sudden, the music was in people's heads. The dance was in their head. The culture was, in the beginning, the world's smallest book is the Irish cookbook. Irish people used to boil everything. It was always horrible. Now Ireland, because of being in the EU and all the chefs that have emigrated to Ireland to feed the tourists, the food is amazing there. So that's caught on over here a bit. Excuse me. It's not just shepherd's pie and potatoes and meatloaf. It's fresh seafood and all kinds of other really good stuff and fresh baked goods and all these cool recipes that have come out of Ireland. And so, it was just the right place at the right time. My dad's Irish pubs were really doing well when he sold everything in the mid '90s. But he just knew it was time to get out because capital gains taxes had changed in his favor. And so he just wanted to retire. He was 70 years old. And so County Clare was just the right place at the right time. It hit right when things were popping. So so when these big shows came out, River Dance and Lord of the Dance, those people came to County Clare, and so you had these beautiful Irish dancers, these girls, and they'd come in and people knew they were coming during these week-long show. So all these people came in to meet them and see them. And, one was more pretty than the next, and they were all world champion dancers. And so we had those guys come in over the course of a couple of years, and it was just perfect timing. And, we had everything going on down there. And like I said, I just built it into a real frenzy. We had just everyone wanted to be there.
Yeah, so you played a huge helping hand in making County Clare what it is today, and it's still a popular place to go for people who are interested in visiting Irish pubs. What ultimately led to you leaving County Clare?
My wife Deb had Katie, and Sean was only a little over a year old, year and a half or so, and she was very torn about quitting her job, but she was really the main breadwinner. She was the steady income and the insurance and everything. And we needed her to go back and keep that going for us. So she was really perplexed and was thinking about retiring and staying home with the kids. And I said, you know what? I've had a good run. You know, I've done 21 years in the bar business to that point. And I said, I'll just, I'll retire and I'll go take care of the two little ones. And I did that for about, excuse me, I did that for about 11 months and realized I couldn't do it anymore. I was liking watching Barney and all these other shows, and I was singing the Barney song, and I'm like, I'm losing my mind. I told her I had it out and get a bar. And so after 11 months, I found Verbrick's in Elm Grove and was able to manage to buy that. So I left County Clare and moved on.
What was attractive about purchasing a restaurant in Elm Grove as opposed to other places, a place maybe closer to Milwaukee or in Wauwatosa where you grew up?
Well, I did it in spite of Elm Grove. I wanted something in Tosa. I just wasn't finding it. I wasn't getting the help I needed down there from people who worked for the village. Everyone on the east side wanted so much money, and or didn't want to sell. So I just couldn't find a place down near County Clare. Couldn't get it going in Tosa. And my friend Dave Spano, I asked him if he knew Bill Verbrick, because I didn't really know him. He said, yeah. I said, can you get me a meeting? So I ended up getting a meeting with Bill Verbrick, who owned Verbrick's for 43 years. And I was able to manage to buy it from him over 6 months. And my father told me, don't buy it. It was such a dump. It was dirty and smoke-filled and dingy, and he'd boarded up all the windows. So it was just a big dump. And I bought it anyway. And I'll never forget, you know, that I gave the guy the check, the first check to buy it. And he slid me a little vinyl bank bag full of keys. And I said, can you meet me tomorrow and show me like where everything is, you know, where the lights are and how to work the cash register and where these keys go. And they're all loose keys and unmarked. And he goes, no. He took the check and I'm like, all right. So I went in at like 7 a.m. the next day, turned on the lights on high. I'd never seen it with the lights on high. I'd always seen it like with dim lights. And I looked by the grill and there was 2 inches of grease on the floor and it was all over the equipment. I never really noticed it before. And I noticed there was like steel wool between the ceiling of the basement and the floor by the grill, which could only mean that he had rodents, you know, because that's the only thing that a rat can't chew through is steel wool. And so I called my dad and I'm like, Dad, this place is really bad. And he's like, I told you not to buy it. I said, you know, I might need some help. He's like, no, you do it. Call me in a couple days. Let me know how everything works out. So I cleaned for about 48 hours. Finally got it where I could actually start painting and things like that. And, you know, I just basically put the lipstick on the pig, you know, just cleaned it up a little bit and didn't have any money after I initially bought it to put anything into it. I had to wait years for that. And so we've remodeled it a couple times since, and it's a beautiful place now. And we've completely remodeled it we bought it in 2002 and we remodeled it in 2004. Just did another full remodel last year. And we just keep working. Now we're working on infrastructure. So we're into a fun time again.
If I recall correctly, you mentioned that there was a fire sometime after you purchased the restaurant and that enabled you to remodel in some way.
It did. So after we bought it in March of 2002, and in August of 2004 or August of 2003, someone from the Sunset Playhouse was clearing their table off at the end of the night. And someone had been smoking and they dumped the ashtray in the garbage can thinking that all the butts were out. And one butt wasn't out and it started the garbage on fire, but not until after the customers and bartender had left did it really get going. The girl who started the fire on accident was still in the parking lot talking to 2 other girls when they noticed the smoke coming out of the second floor. And so the interior of the bar was damaged pretty badly. So it was a full gut job. So it did enable us to, through the insurance money, redo the entire place and build it back up. And it really changed the way we do things now.
So after the fire had happened, was there any like idea of maybe moving the bar somewhere else after you had built up like a base, or did you know you wanted to stay in that location?
I knew I wanted to stay. I had already started cultivating a really good crowd of people I never knew before, but to this day who are still my good friends. And over the 19 years, the first two customers who came in, I'll never forget. I was painting and doing some stuff and working on some things, and they popped in the side door. They tried to pull on the front door, but I had it locked because I wasn't open yet. I wasn't going to open for another couple of days. And these guys, Stuart Oliver and Ed McVeigh, as I said, they're still really good friends of mine. I just met them that day. They popped their heads and they said, "Are you open yet?" And they said, "No." And they're like, we really wanted to be the first to drink at our new Irish pub. And then the one goes, Ed McVeigh goes, "Do you have any cold beer?" I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, you're open now." So they came in and they drank and they called their friends and we got pretty busy. I wasn't supposed to be open. And I said, "Hey, we got 1 hour left. I'm going to close it down. I got to get to work. I got to help the painters and do some stuff." And so that's how we met with a lot of those first guys. And we've all become friends and stayed friends the whole time. It's been a pretty great experience being part of Elm Grove.
So you guys have been friends like the whole time since your pub has opened. I mean, have you seen a huge change in the clientele, or have you had like the same people over the past 19 years at the
We
pub?
keep growing. We keep growing. If you take away the disruption of coronavirus, we've continued to grow our base. We've got a lot more younger people, more families. As the demographic changes in Elm Grove, we're getting more young families in Elm Grove. So I'm getting much more of that. I've got a really great base of old timers who come in at happy hour on a regular basis. A lot of my old timers have gone away because they're afraid to come out during this time, but we certainly will welcome them back with open arms in the coming months as vaccines become available and they become less afraid to be around people.
So, I mean, with coronavirus becoming a thing, how did you go about remedying the situation?
Well, basically, we took we got kicked in the teeth. We've lost money ever since it happened on a regular basis. First hemorrhaging money, and then just bleeding a little bit. It's just been a rough go. What we've done to try to help ourselves is we've implemented all the safe practices, distancing our furniture, really doubling down on our already excellent cleaning program, awareness, masking, social distancing to as best we can. A lot of our clientele are not interested in socially distancing. They want to come up and talk to each other at the bar, and we're not fighting them on it. We're letting people go to whatever their comfort level is. If people are uncomfortable, we'll find them a spot in a more remote area away from people, and we'll protect them, and we'll have masked employees working with them. And so we've got given the opportunity. We did a lot more outdoor this year. We had 16 bands in the parking lot between July and September. We've added more heating out on our patio. We've literally left our patio furniture out in the winter for the first time ever and added more heaters. So we've given people an option to still go outside, even in the cold weather. So, and we did have some good weather this fall. So we're able to really utilize the outdoor seating to our advantage.
So, I mean, throwing events like having bands in the parking lot is a great way to kind of bring the community together, especially during a tough time like this. I mean, in general, over the past 19 years, how have you seen the community in Elm Grove grow? Not just necessarily in your pub, but I mean, working there for all these years, how have you seen the community as itself grow?
I think we're getting more young families and they're more closely tied together. You've got the young people that are part of like the junior guild, which is somewhere which like your mother would join when the kids are young, and to get to network with their peers, and then the guys would get together and they might be in like the Elm Grove Yacht Club, which nobody even owns a boat, but they have a yacht club. So it's kind of a fun thing. And those young guys all get together. And then there's another group of middle-aged 40s and 50s that all are Western Racket Club people, and they're all real tight. And so, you know, I was running a farmer's market for a while, 4 years before coronavirus, getting a sense of community there with vendors and live music. And I sold the beverages and some food. And we did that. I'm in charge of the Oktoberfest. I'm the main sponsor for Oktoberfest in Elm Grove. I'm involved in Variety Club, a children's charity right here in Elm Grove. Helps put kids in specialized bikes, handicapped children, gets them mobile. So I'm on the board for that. So I'm involved in the community that way. I'm involved in almost every charity in Elm Grove. So I'm involved. I get to see what's going on, get to meet the people, and I get to be a liaison between the village board and some of the things that are going on here. I'm actively involved in working with the Mandel Project, trying to bring the neighborhood groups that need some understanding together with Mandel, and bringing the village board together with Mandel in a setting at my bar where we can hash things out without yelling, like at board meetings where people go and scream and just misplace their emotions. And I've been able to do that successfully a couple times. And along with Dave Spano, class of '83, the two of us have spearheaded a lot of good stuff, keep getting the village going. But as far as growth in the village, it's not so much growth as it's change. So the demographics are changing. A lot of the old people, we've got such a great public school district in Elmbrook that a lot of the old people are finally able to get out of their homes after maybe losing money in their 401k, losing home values after the recession of 08, 09, that they're finally getting out so they can find condos or nice apartments in Elm Grove, keep their zip code, and then younger families can move in and get their kids into Elmbrook schools or St. Mary's. And so it's a really great opportunity going on right now. They just built a senior living housing for independent seniors on Blue Mound Road in Elm Grove for 72 units. I know that'll sell out quickly. That'll open up a lot of homes in Elm Grove for younger families, which I'm meeting new families every week. I'm meeting new families, multiple families every week. So it's really, I get to feel the pulse of Elm Grove because I'm right there. My son or another bartender will tell me right away, like, hey, if we don't know someone, we'll talk to them, and then I'll find out through my staff if they're new, like, oh, these people just moved to Elm Grove. So I dive in right away and I get to know them, get to know their family, get to know their kids, talk to them, and then they come back. They know they have a sense of community once they've met me and my staff, and that's all it takes. A lot of these people haven't gotten into the junior guild or yacht club or anything yet. They're so brand new, but they're like, let's go down to that Irish pub we saw. And so people are showing up, and we're getting to be like the front line of the welcoming committee. It's really fun. So I get to represent the village and tell them about all the unique stuff going on and how welcoming it is and how friendly it is and how walkable it is and all the good things about what we have in Elm Grove.
Yeah, I mean, Irish pubs have always seemed to be a place of community and gathering and bringing people together, and it's good to see that you're doing that even to this day, especially in this time of turmoil, still introducing new families to the community and bringing people together.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, when I go out of town, the first thing I do is look for a good Irish pub, and I find out the lay of the land. I talk to the bartender or the host or something, and I ask them where I should go and shouldn't go, and I usually get the right answer. So it works out. You're going to get some good information there and usually have a great experience also.
Yeah. And you mentioned faith life is a huge part in your life. Are you still a member of St. Jude's Parish, or do you go somewhere else for Mass nowadays?
We go all over, but we mostly go to St. Mary's, Elm Grove, St. Mary's Visitation. We still like to go to Jesu. We'll go to St. Sebastian's on Sunday night if we didn't have a chance to go to Mass Saturday or Sunday morning. I go to St. Aloysius on 92nd and Greenfield. If I miss St. Sebastian's at 7 o'clock on Sunday, I'll even go down to Marquette University. They have an 8 o'clock student mass in the Union Chapel. So I've been known to go there. We go to St. John Vianney sometimes. For Christmas, we're going to Old St. Mary's downtown. So we're pretty much free agents. We're still members of St. Jude the Apostle. But as far as Mass, because our children aren't there anymore, we're just really, really open to going wherever. And as long as we can get the sacraments and the word. And so, yeah, we're pretty open to it.
So sticking along with like St. Jude's and Marquette, I mean, you went there, you saw your kids go there. I mean, how have you seen a change over the years, both those schools?
Well, to be honest, a couple things. Jesuits are mostly gone, if not all gone. So it's a huge part of it. A whole different feel and look to it. There's no more swats. If you got a jug, you got to take a jug. You don't get to get hit in the butt with a sawed-off driver. That usually saved me a lot when I could get to work on time by just taking one swat by Mr. Fanderstill in the gym. So there's none of that. I think Marquette High is very political now, very outwardly political, very liberal. And I don't think it's just social justice at all. I think it's just liberalism for liberalism. And I don't like what I see. But it's not up to me anymore. It's not my school anymore. But I just think they're very political. And I don't think that's the role that they need to play. And it started with Father Saz and it still goes on today. And I just don't think that they should be in the game of politics. I think they should just be in the education game. And so that's just a personal side note that I wanted to add in there. But yeah, that's part of what I see. And I don't really know the inner workings of the school anymore. My son coaches football there. We still pull for Marquette to do well, to educate well, and to make successful young men, and to educate them for the rest of their lives, teach them how to think. And I still think they do a good job of that. So as far as St. Jude, same thing. It's become all lay. There's no nuns anymore from one time I was there, which is a long time ago. But it's under great leadership. Catherine Ledeen is an amazing leader, and kids are coming out with really good skills for high school and beyond. They're really at the top of their game over there. So I think the education is better at St. Jude than it was when I was there. And I think I would probably even could say it's probably better at Marquette High. I can't say for sure, but I know St. Jude's for sure. My kids just got out of there recently. I didn't really get as involved in my children's school in high school. I basically left it up to their teachers. They were at an age where they were supposed to be responsible for themselves. So I let them do that. So I'm not really sure if it's better at Marquette High now than it was. I'm just trusting that it probably is.
And taking a step back, you mentioned Bob Uecker was a person that would go to your parents' bar by County Stadium. I mean, he's like one of the biggest celebrities or biggest local celebrities in Milwaukee. Were there any like meaningful like experiences that you shared with him when he would ever be there? Or
well, I got him pretty drunk one night, and to the point where my mom wouldn't let him drive home, and my brother had to drive him home, and he was not happy about it. But he was schnockered, and he would just tell stories, and it would just keep going and keep going, and he had story after story, and he would make everyone laugh. He was just a really funny guy. So he loved my mom, and they had a lot of laughs together. My mom's pretty funny too, and my dad's funny, and they were just had fun. That's what it was. It was just a lot of fun.
That's good to hear, especially, I mean, just sharing meaningful connections with, I mean, someone who's so big in Milwaukee even to this day. I mean,
he's very private now. In his later life, he's super private. Like, I'll play golf at North Hills where he's a member, and I've been asked, don't even approach him. And, even if you knew him back in the day, when he's with like his grandson or something, he wants to be left alone. So he's made it clear to like the bar staff and the management. So he's not as approachable as he used to be. And I think, he's just aged a lot. He's in his 80s, and I think he wants to be more private now after being so public for so many years. But I was able to get to him when he was still pretty public.
And I mean, mentioning, your mom and having good connections with him. I mean, what are your parents up to today, and along with your siblings as well?
My older brother, who worked in the business for my dad at the first bar, is in Minneapolis. He's married with 4 grandkids, and he works in logistics after working in trust at U.S. Bank. My older sister just moved back from New York City, where she was a corporate nurse. She just moved back here to retire. My younger brother has a limousine company in Aspen, Colorado. My younger sister is retired. She was beverage director for Shelley Catering in Thiensville for 25 years. She has a special needs daughter, which she takes care of, and she also does the books for her husband, who has his own electrical company. And then my mother and father are in their early 90s, and they're retired in independent living at San Camilo on Blue Mountain Road by the zoo. And they're 93 and my mom's 90. And they're just living out the last part of their life. They retired about 24 years ago now.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like you've had a huge part and like helped, observed a huge part of Milwaukee's history through like this lens of pubs and bars. And I mean, you went to college here as well. I just want to first thank you for sharing your story today. I mean, you were a huge help to us. It was really interesting hearing things you had to share. And I think I can speak for all of us when we just say thank you for taking up your time and helping us.